What's going on, everybody? Psych Perspectives, GeoFux here. So, in this segment, I want to talk about childhood trauma and narcissism. So, like I was saying in yesterday's video, when it comes to narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, a lot of this originates from childhood trauma. You know, it comes from people being children and they're lacking emotional support, guidance, love from their parents. And a lot of times children are neglected, physically and emotionally, sexually abused. All kinds of unnecessary traumatic experiences are placed upon that child. And a lot of times as a child, we don't have the resources or capabilities at that young age to handle so much stress and trauma. This is why, and I made a video discussing this. God, it might have been summer of 2019. I want to say August. I made a video where I discussed this. But children are not resilient. That is the biggest crock of shit there is. I hate when people sit up and be like, oh, they'll be okay. Children forget. Children move on. Children are resilient. That's a lie. A lot of us are dealing with mental health issues today because of traumatic experiences we experienced as a child. No, it's not that you're resilient. You just don't understand what's happening to you. And a lot of these traumatic experiences that we go through, especially in the Black community, is dust under the rug. So people literally just bounce around from trauma to trauma to trauma with no real healing, no counseling, no therapy, no nothing. And as you get older, these traumas, they build up. And pretty soon, you're literally dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as a slew of other mental health issues. Okay? Now, keep in mind, you've got the trauma experience that also, unfortunately, creates a lot of narcissistic behaviors and mental health issues. And then you also have people who are born with chemical imbalances in the brain. Hence why they have schizophrenia, bipolar, ADHD, there's so many other, antisocial disorder. But a lot of these personality disorders are directly related to early childhood experiences and trauma. They're trauma induced for the most part. Okay? And unfortunately, when you look at people, as they grow up, they're no longer a child, they've reached adulthood, a lot of people who are narcissistic as adults, now they're adults, and they're literally adults with the mind of a child. And a lot of times when it comes to trauma is like a broken tape recorder in the sense that it keeps you in a loop, right? You keep reliving the traumatic experiences, okay? Post-traumatic stress disorder. You keep reliving it, it keeps you in a loop. So if you were molested, guess what? You keep reliving that, right? And a lot of things is we are products of our environments. So a lot of us who grew up in abusive, toxic, dysfunctional households and environments, we only know what we know, right? So a lot of us end up attracted to people that resemble our abusers. I'm just being real. This is why it's no surprise when you look at a lot of the people, if you grew up in a narcissistic, toxic, abusive, dysfunctional household, the people that you tend to be attracted to or end up in relationships with are also toxic, abusive, dysfunctional, and possibly narcissistic. Because that's all you know. If that was your first role model on how love is supposed to be, then it's no surprise that the people that you tend to fall for or go after or end up being friends with or associating with have the same behaviors, the same attitudes. This is why it is so important that people get into counseling and therapy, and I'm going to keep saying it. some of us need to be on medication because this is no way to live. Okay? So, what ends up happening is a lot of time after they've been through the childhood trauma, the abuse, the toxic environment, they grow up, they're adults. Now everything is about protecting a fragile ego. And a lot of people, when they deal with this as a child, you don't necessarily understand what's happening. You don't get why people are treating you like this or doing you any old way. So a lot of us, you know, you learn to dissociate. And a lot of narcissists, they dissociated from their true self a very long time ago. Okay? They don't even know who they are as a person, right? Because they left their true self in their childhood when that experience took place. So you don't even know who you are. You know, you're literally wearing a mask. And as many times when we talk about narcissism, we talk about how they wear these masks. They have all these fake personalities and personas because they don't even know who they are. And then they spend their lives mirroring, and I'll do a video on this too. They spend their lives mirroring other people. If you notice with narcissists, they're almost like a chameleon. Depending on who they're hanging out with at the time, all of a sudden, they take on the same traits and behaviors as the person they're hanging out with. The minute they stop hanging out with them, they go and they meet somebody else, then there's somebody else again. It's like I said, they are multiple different people at different times depending on who they're hanging out with and associating with, okay? So they dissociated from their true self, their true identity a long time ago. So now the focus is on, you know how they say keeping up with the Joneses? Well, with the narcissist, it's keeping up with the ego, all right? They have an overinflated ego. Everything, you know, is about protecting the ego. It is so fragile, and they are extremely codependent. This is why when you meet a narcissist, you know, in a relationship base, right, they come on very strong and heavy from get-go, aka love bombing, which I will do a video discussing love bombing, even though there are hundreds of videos on YouTube on love bombing. You can go on Google and research a lot of this stuff yourself, which is another reason why I don't understand. I'm going to keep saying this. In the day and age that we're living in, when we literally are sitting up with smartphones in our hands, there's no excuse to be willfully ignorant anymore. You're choosing to be ignorant at this point. Anyways, so they come on very heavy, very strong. They want to spend all their time with you. You know, they're constantly calling and texting you. You know, and keep in mind, all the stuff that they're doing at the beginning is to hook, line, and sinker you into a fake relationship from hell. But that's a whole nother video. The point is, trauma impacts people greatly. And yes, we are individuals, and people deal with trauma and death differently. People deal with negativity differently. But overwhelmingly, humans are kind of pretty much the same. You know, a person can only withstand so much before they crack. And a lot of times, we just assume because a child is a child and they're young, they don't know what's going on. They'll move on. They'll get over it. Well, no. In many cases, these children grow up to have severe mental health issues that could have been prevented by simply putting them in therapy and counseling instead of praying it away, or in the black community, a mixture of praying it away and sweeping it under the rug. And I know narcissism isn't just a black issue, doesn't just happen in the black community. It happens to people regardless of their race, ethnicity, culture. However, speaking as a black person, and most of the people that watch my videos are black, and I'm talking about issues that I've dealt with as a black person in the black community, that's where my lens and scope is coming from. And it's really odd how, oh, it isn't just black people, yet most of the people that watch my video happen to be black, and most of them have literally similar, if not the same, experience. So I'm just saying, after a while, you can miss me with the, oh, you're stereotyping, oh, you're generalizing. Well, no, This seems to be a lot of our truths, unfortunately. Okay, and this is why I address it. But this video is already 10 minutes long. The point, what I'm trying to put out there, okay, the big point is that trauma really induces a lot of mental health issues and personality disorders, okay, if left unchecked, right? So stay tuned, more videos to come.